Hi, Abhijat.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good, and welcome to the Alchemist Kitchen YouTube channel and podcast. And so, where we'll talk about the three events that we have scheduled for June. But first of all, for our audience, how can you go and talk about like what your history and how did you become a Kundalini teacher? Like I know, but I'd love it for you to share with our audience your journey.
Okay, well, it all started, I guess, like when I was a child. I've always been very interested in yoga and yogic practices and just kind of lived that particular lifestyle. And it just kind of just happened for me personally, becoming a teacher and just deeper listening to myself and like what my soul was calling. And visions started to come through of like where I needed to be and what I needed to do. And my teacher appeared and I didn't know what was happening, and it just kind of happened. And I said, I think this is something that my soul is wanting to do. And I kind of just listened to the call after years and years since I was 14 when I started practicing like a steady yoga and meditation practice. And it wasn't till later on like where I realized like, hey, this is probably what my soul wants to do to offer to the world, just one part of it. I would always get things like, are you a yoga teacher? When I would be in yoga class. I'm like, no. It's funny though, like, how maybe sometimes people can predict
Yes.
you, but then you really aren't seeing it like at the time.
For yourself, yes.
Exactly. So, or they would take a class next to me and they'd be like, oh, it was really beautiful sitting next to you, in the class, and just the energy. Never really realized it. And then, just as my practice constantly grew stronger and deeper, and my meditative practice became stronger, and it was easy for me to go into my meditative mind, it just kind of came to me a vision. And then from there, I just answered the call, and the rest is history. I became
and here we
not
are.
even, and not even really, I went, and not even with the intention to offer this service to the world, more of just following what I knew was true to me and why I needed to be somewhere, and the rest kind of just unfolded.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
And it's still unfolding.
And at such a young age, because at 14, like, I don't know what I was doing when I was 14. I was into boys. I had crushes. Hormones were raging, back in the Philippines.
And it's so different now too. Like, it's more of like a normal thing now. When I was 14, it was very, very weird, and and just all of this stuff just like outside of the normal kind of paradigm. And I even stopped eating meat at 5 years old. And nowadays, like, so many children come into the world without eating any type of meat or animal products. And I see it even when I'm teaching in public schools, the kids during the holidays, and how they talk about like what they eat during, like, say, Thanksgiving, and and how they don't eat meat. And it's like really interesting because that's like 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and they've already started, and they're already like no yoga, like, when you come in. So it's really nice to see the world kind of shifting into this more natural state of being, of like doing no harm to everything.
Yeah, that is very powerful. And you're right, there's a much more acceptance of being vegan. Like if you say you're vegan, no one bats an eye now. I mean, probably, in other places. But right now, like if you say you're vegan, it's there's a lot more people that say that they're either vegan or vegetarian, or, and for health reasons too, because I heard even President Clinton actually went vegan just because he had heart issues, and that is what has saved him, because he's not eating meat. And from a health perspective, there's that, but also from a spirit perspective, don't do any harm. So when you started on your journey, like when you were 14, and your teacher came and you came into this practice, you mentioned that you were getting visions as well. So would you say that the yoga helped you like really reconnect or connect with your psychic abilities, your deeper connection to spirit? So because a lot of your writing is also about which I absolutely love. So, and I love what you wrote for the June 14 class, and we'll talk about that at the later part. You talk about connecting with your ancestors. So can we delve a little bit into that, as to how has that manifested for you, and how that knowledge, and connection grew for you?
Yeah, well, I would have to say I have always been connected since I was a child, but it has been more profound since I took this journey, into yoga and the meditative mind. I think I have a family history of seers as well. My grandmother, which I didn't know, so this is what's so beautiful about having, your lineage around, and to be able to, just talk to them, especially as they get into these older ages, like 90, and I'm like, wait, I want to document, your story. So I started talking with my paternal side grandmother, and she was telling me when she was young, she was sent away from her mother to live with her grandmother, because she was like a seer, and like she could see things and like predict things. And it was very not cool back in that time, it can be very witchy or whatever, so that was really interesting, because I knew on my maternal side the powers of my ancestors, and my great grandmother Maria Corazon, which I love her name because the corazon is like the heart. She was a medicine woman in our village, or in the province that my family came from in the Philippines, Pangasinan. And she would heal a lot of the children and the people inside of the villages through herbs. So people would come to her when they weren't feeling well, and she would just, pick out the herbs and heal them. And I've always had a strong connection with herbs and plants since a child as well. There's a really good book, I don't know if you know of it, it's called Back to Eden.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. Well, I received that book when I was in the 5th grade.
Wow.
And it's like a super dense book, by my uncle. And that and like herb books. So it's just like it's in my genes. And I think I've had like a remembrance of it from when I was 5, where I just chose not to want to eat any animal products or any meat. And I was very lucky that I had a family that supported that and wasn't like, you need to eat meat, or like any of those kind of things. Even though they were consuming, meat, it was okay. Like, this was my choice. And I feel very grateful that I've had family members like that my whole life to kind of support me in any of the weird things that I do. And I'm sure that, I was talking with my mom. My mom messaged me the other day, and she was like, I'm so proud of you, blah, 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 like, and all these things. And I was like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, I was like, but I've always been like this. But it's hard, like when you're always like completely different from the status
Mhm.
quo, like growing up. So I was always, kind of like this. I was always like, I didn't even crawl. I went straight to walking at 6 months. Like I'm like crazy to do that. And, I've always just had this, my mom's like, well, like I had my worries, or like, just I always did things that I always felt kind of true. And I didn't really care like if other people weren't doing it. And it's
Mhm.
really nice now to see the world kind of now, like the things that were so weird that I used to do, it's like now the world is starting to do it. So it's like you could see, and it's like, who
And
who cares? But it's healed.
who cares? But it's a validation as well for, and an affirmation of the path that you are walking on is, it's really the path of truth, you know?
And I think that everybody has this ability inside of them, and that's like one of the things I think, like for me, like with Kundalini, it's a way for me to help people to extract like within them what is their own particular blueprint, their own particular calling. We all have completely different makeups, and instead of trying to be like someone else or trying to do what looks right, on the outside, it's like, how can we really get into our truth and really find like through our truth, like what our contribution is to the world? Because I believe like wholeheartedly that every person who came here in this particular day and age is here because they have some type of gift to help elevate this world into a more sustainable ecosystem on behalf of all. And we all have it, and we're just trying to figure it out and get back to that remembering, whether it's through with plants, and whether it's through whatever. And even like the jobs that we have, like I'm not saying everyone quit their job and play with
So
plants, like
it's an
no, but I
individual,
want to give
yeah.
people the awareness and the consciousness that they can create better systems where they do no harm at their regular kind of jobs, at their corporate jobs.
Mhm.
Because if that changes the mindset, it kind of trickles down into the whole
To everybody else.
into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like we can still do things where everyone is thriving together. And when I mean everything, I mean all sentient beings. I'm not talking about just people and classes and places. Like I'm talking about everything. How can we build things, that uses resources where we're not hurting the earth, because we all know that earth is hurting, and we see it so many ways, through so many callings, through the natural disasters, I mean,
Climate
just
change, yeah.
planet change, like everything. And it's like we're still not getting it, and we can still build resources by being more responsible, I think. And that's
And
what the Aquarian Age is about.
and that's beautiful, that we're not like the framework that worked for you may not necessarily work for everybody, but you're showing the way, like what are the options, what are the things, and try it out and see if it works for. And so your
I mean, it's
expertise.
not it's not something that's is going to be like that. You have to show up, you got to
Mhm.
show up for yourself every single day. I think that's also part of this age of technology and stuff. It's like everybody wants things fast, but nature isn't fast. And the more you sit with like
Yes.
what's happening now maybe seems fast, but it's been happening for a very, 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 very long time, hundreds of years. Just may seem fast like right now because we're at that tipping point, but it's been happening for a very, very, very long time. And so we can't expect us to get into a practice and expect a miracle overnight. But I do know one thing: out of all of the forms of yoga that I have done, Kundalini yoga is one of the fastest yogic systems of really just unlocking your potential, you know, from what I've experienced, then doing, you know, a practice of 108 salutations, or they're just like, it's like it moves, like we're all energy. Energy is constantly moving. And what it is it's a shift of the unconsciousness and into consciousness. So bringing us into our potential where we can actually like feel and experience different parts of ourselves. So you kind of have to be pretty badass, I think, to do Kundalini yoga. Well, you know why? Well, I was laughing like when the pandemic first hit, and I was telling people like most of the people who work with me were just very like, you know, not so shook, because you're used to change in Kundalini yoga. You have no idea what it's going to be like when you come forth into an offering with me. You know, I could just have you doing 62 minutes of breath, you know, that's it. You go into another yoga class, you know what you're going to be doing. Inhale, downward dog, exhale, you know, pop. You're going to go into your whole sequence of this muscle memory that you remember, constantly doing it over and over and over and over. With Kundalini yoga, it's all on the energetic systems of all of our bodies. And so not just like the physical, really bringing into harmony the breath with the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spirit, and really feeling how things shift. And I could do the exact same thing with you the next day, and you could have a totally different experience because the energy had moved. So I know as far as it being fast, it is the fastest, I believe, out of all the forms of yoga that I have done, which I didn't even know that I needed. Like, you know, I knew that there was always something else there. And every time I would go to yoga class, I'd be like, oh, I wish it had a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. And fact, I never even took Kundalini yoga until I saw the vision, was like, I don't know what this is, but I think I'm supposed to go there. Signed up and went. As soon as I sat down, it was like my soul remembered. It was like, yes, this is the yoga that you have been looking for since you were 14.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, it was like a total remembrance, because I was getting the movement, I was getting the breath, I was getting the connection to spirit. And it always seemed like a weird yoga to a lot of people, because it's not a yoga that they are used to seeing in the Western world. But if you go to India and anywhere you go, you'll see people doing what looks like Kundalini yoga, which is like a Kriya yoga. They'll be sitting by the water, big groups doing all of these like all of these kind of like breath that you're like, what? Like, you know, it's just that we're not used to seeing that.
And there's,
you know,
yeah, and there's some mental aspect to Kundalini that I find really reveals to me the inner conversations that I have with myself, like, yeah, the doubts and the questioning and the confrontation of like, I need to try to save myself. This is really hurting. This is like more than 5 minutes of breathing. But it brings up all of these energy that I'm not used to seeing, but it's a part of me that I guess people call it the shadow side. That you're right, the Kundalini practice is what brings it out a lot faster, because there's like so many gates that I have to go through in my normal life in order to see that side. But Kundalini just like takes away all of those gates and just takes me straight to who I really am. And I'm going, I didn't even know that those are the kinds of conversations I'm having with myself.
Yeah. And those conversations a lot are holding density that you don't even know, you know.
Exactly. Yes.
Inside it. And, you know, it all is everywhere, and it's going to hold someplace. And it's like, okay, now we are able to have the consciousness and unlock it and let it, you know, find freedom. And then you get more information, maybe new information about yourself that you didn't know. That's not those you know, not something that you didn't realize that was maybe suppressing something, you know, to actually take form. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And on June 14, for the supermoon class, you mentioned that that's a powerful gate, that's where with the supermoon, it's a way of elevating ourselves into the next level. What do you exactly mean by that?
Well, supermoons, any type of moon, you know, any kind of moon cycle we're going to feel, especially full moons, new moons, you know, the 11th day of the moon, very good. But a super moon is when the sun, or when the moon is the closest to the earth. So we're really, really feeling it. We already feel, you know, a full moon, that lunation of the sun shining to illuminate the moon. So the sun is in Gemini during this time for this particular one. So the Gemini consciousness and a Sagittarius moon. So they're the opposites. And it's like the smaller mind, the Gemini, the mental, and then the Sagittarius mind, which is, again, ruled by that Jupiterian energy of expansion. So when a supermoon happens, it's more potent. But this particular moon, there's so much going on with it. But what I like to look at is it is in a crazy conjunction with the galactic center. And that's an energy portal, you know, within the cosmos that take us to the higher dimensions of reality. So we can get super, super, super powerful downloads of information during this time to really align us to our soul alignments, because it's a Sagittarius moon. So Sagittarius, we know, it's like truth seeking. It is wisdom, you know, it really wants to know and like bring in more truth and more knowledge and more wisdom to us. So it's going to be a really beautiful moon to take us out of our status quo and into more, I think, higher realms of our existence. So getting us off of that same exact routine and allowing us to communicate into higher ground. So it's the first supermoon of 2022. It's going to feel less intense than the eclipse energy, because we just came out of like a whole eclipse season and things are, you know, settling down, but we have Saturn in retrograde now as well. So Saturn is all about discipline. So we're really putting in the discipline to what we have learned and what we have discovered about ourselves, maybe those shadows during the eclipse period, you know. Are we going to really put discipline into now our knowledge? And so we're going to break free all of the spaces, you know, that we haven't dreamed possible. Using the Neptune, there's a lot of Neptune energy too. Neptune can bring us into a dream state. It can be enlightenment, you know, or it can be confusion. And so, you know, it's like you're playing with all of these different energies, and it's like, which one are you going to tune into? What are you going to tap into? You know, I mean, there's so much going on, and this is why moons with the full moon, you know, that name lunatic didn't come from nowhere. Like, you know, you don't really know. People go crazy on full moons.
Oh, I know.
I tend to tap into the energies of, okay, the elevated energies and things when I work with it. Let's see, what can we do to bring us into a higher realm of consciousness during the moon, instead of fall into these status quo kind of things, or like, oh, we're going to blame it on this, or it's, you know, this is happening. Well, let's see, there's all of these things going on with this moon right now, you know, with Neptune again, where we can be so confused, and then Gemini and Mercury, you know, at the same time during this, the sun and Mercury, Gemini, Mercury still coming out of in its shadow period. So still like a lot of confusion, but we have this super powerful conjunction with the galactic center. So it's like all of these information can be coming from other realms, and that even includes, you know, our ancestors guiding us, you know, during this time, helping us really align to what our soul is trying to call for.
So we have the June 14 supermoon event, and then you also have your 4-day midsummer shine solar ignition starting June 21st. And so what can we expect for that 4-day event?
Oh, I'm so excited. I love going into the pillar points of the year, and the summer solstice, the midsummer, it's a celebration of 4 days. I mean, throughout the world, throughout indigenous cultures, everybody's celebrating. It's not just one day, it's a multiple day event. And as we know, we get into that solstice time. It's like the height of the light, and then the days start to get darker. So we'll be working with stuff to really keep that fire, which is what you give prayer to during the summer solstice. You know, it's the fire. And you know, just like the natives do the sun dance during that time, it's all about bringing in the fire energy and keeping that fire going as the days unfortunately start to get less light. You know, it's like super exciting, but you know, it's a time of the bounty of everything that we have worked so far from, and celebrations. So we'll be working every single day to really work on the light body and to keep ourselves activated into the turning point. We'll have each 4 days will be an hour transmission. One day is just going to be working on our breath. So it's going to be all different things every single day. Movement, breath, our voice, activating our voice, which helps us clear our karmas. So a lot of different things, but all to really ignite that power of the sun, and, you know, be in gratitude and celebration for the newness that's happening.
That's beautiful. And of course, we have to round it up, you have a June 28th full moon class as well. So more to come.
Is it a full moon or new moon?
Or is it the full moon?
I think it's
new moon.
It might be a new moon. Yeah, because we have a full moon.
Okay. Yeah, because we have the super moon and the midsummer and then the new moon.
I think it's the Cancer new moon. So yeah, a lot of good stuff happening this month in June at Alchemist Kitchen and everywhere.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on to our YouTube channel and our podcast, and I look forward to all of your classes. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alchemist Kitchen, and thank you to all of you for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
So thank you.